Hi, welcome to another edition of Counterpunch with Trevor Loudon, the show that exposes the unfolding world communist revolution. Like the show, share the show, and especially subscribe on epochtv. Well, today I'm going to do some basic groundwork. I talk about communist parties all the time, but most Americans have very little understanding of what a communist party is, or how many there are in the United States, or what impact they have. Today I'm going to do a rundown. I'm going to give a list of the main communist organizations in the United States, what they do, and a little bit about their impact. Now I'm going to start with Communist Party USA. This is the premier communist party in the country. It was founded in 1919 in Chicago. It built tremendous strength during World War II. It was over 100,000 members. It had helped to infiltrate 400 spies into the Roosevelt administration. It helped to start organizations like the United Nations, the World Bank, etc., and some of the massive social programs that have been crippling America ever since. So it was very influential in the day, but it still is. It had another burst during the Vietnam War era. It died away a little bit in the 90s, and now it's coming back. A few years ago it had 5,000 members. I estimate it's quite a few more now. They're consolidating, they've restarted the Young Communist League, they're active in virtually every state in the Union, and very well infiltrated into the Democratic Party. The Communist Party is tied at the hip to the Democrats. They have people like Rick Nagin up in Ohio, who's a very senior Ohio Democrat, runs for public office on the Democrat ticket, very closely connected to Democrat politicians, but he's the head of the Communist Party in that state. Down in Texas, you've got Penny Shore, a bona fide Communist Party member who now serves as a Democrat in the Texas state legislature. The Communist Party USA is very much tied into the International Communist Network, which is still very powerful. It's no longer under Soviet leadership, though the Communist Party of the Russian Federation still plays a very big role. The Communist Party USA now really looks to the Communist Party of China for leadership, but it's also tied to the British Communist Party, the Canadian Communist Party, Brazilian Communist Party, Iraqi, Iranian, Cuban, of course, Vietnamese, very, very close to the Vietnamese Communist Party. It's part of the International Communist Network. It also participates in the World Peace Council, the old Soviet Front, World Federation of Trade Unions, and also the Women's International Democratic Federation and the World Federation of Democratic Youth. All communist fronts, international communist fronts. In 2017, the CPUSA sent several delegates to Sochi, Russia for an international youth conference organized by the World Federation of Democratic Youth to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution, and the keynote speaker was, of course, Vladimir Putin. Democratic Socialists of America, the largest Marxist group in this country by far. They claim about 90,000 members. Many of them are just paper members that don't do much. There's probably a hardcore of about 15 to 20,000. But they're active in every state. They have people in state legislatures as Democrats, New Hampshire and Massachusetts and New York and Texas, Georgia and California and Arizona and many other states. They have 5 members of Congress who acknowledge their membership, and that's Jamal Bowman in New York, that's Rashida Tlaib in Michigan, who replaced John Conyers in Michigan, who was also a DSA member. They have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They also have Danny Davis, a longtime DSA member from Chicago, and Cori Bush from Missouri. Jerry Nadler, the head of the Judiciary Committee, the most powerful congressman in Congress, I believe, has been a member of Democratic Socialists of America, as has Jan Schakowsky, the longtime congresswoman from Chicago. They have about 6 people on the Chicago City Council now. There's several people in the Minneapolis City Council, the same in Milwaukee, the same in New York. They are taking over the Democratic Party in many locations around the country. A sort of umbrella group, they have Communist Party members within their ranks, people from the League of Revolutionary Struggle, Liberation Road, Committees of Correspondence, Socialist Alternative, former members of the International Socialist Organization. They have Maoists, Trotskyists, and traditional communists in their ranks. It's a sort of grab bag. It's sort of a franchise of all these local communist parties united under the banner of Democratic Socialists of America. They used to be tied to the Socialist International, but that was too wussy for them. So now they're allied to a network of communist parties of Europe, Africa, especially Latin America, especially in Brazil. They are also very, very close to an organization called the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung. That has a branch in Manhattan, New York. It trains Democratic Socialists of America members. It trains members of the Bernie Sanders movement, which is pretty much identical to Democratic Socialists of America. And this Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung is wholly owned by a German political party called Die Linke. The left. It used to be called the Party of Democratic Socialism, and before that it was the Socialist Unity Party, the old East German Communist Party. So Democratic Socialists of America definitely deserves to be classified as a communist party, because it is. DSA, by the way, gave us Obamacare. They were the driving force behind that. One of their members, Dr. Quentin Young, it was Obama's physician and educated Obama into the ideas of socialized healthcare. Obama's immigration advisor, a man called Eliseo Medina, another member of Democratic Socialists of America, can largely claim credit for the open borders policies under the Obama and now Biden administrations. Then there's Liberation Road. It used to be called Freedom Road Socialist Organization. They changed their name a couple of years ago to avoid confusion with another organization called Freedom Road Socialist Organization. They were both once the same organization, but they split. But both sides kept the same organization, which was very confusing. So we're talking about Liberation Road here. It comes out of the Maoist movement of the 1960s and 70s. It's former members of the Communist Workers' Party, the League of Revolutionary Struggle, the Line of March, and other Maoist groups all came together in 1985 to unify the fractured Maoist movement. It is very close to the Chinese consulate. They have consulates in America. They have Liberation Road members living in the People's Republic of China. Some members are also active in the American-China Friendship Association, etc. They follow the Chinese line, but they don't like to be too obvious about it. They're also very strong in the Chinese Progressive Association of San Francisco. That's a big voter registration organization that really runs that town. The same Chinese Progressive Association in Boston, which is very influential in that town. Both those organizations are very close to Communist China.
We have a relationship with the Chinese embassy. Like, we actually have I've had to have various conversations with them about our positioning.
The Liberation Road has very strong in the Bay Area, strong in New York and Missouri, but the main headquarters are in the southern states now. It moved into Tennessee and North Carolina and Florida and Texas and Georgia over the last few years because they have a philosophy. They believe that the southern states are what they call a new confederacy. They are the backbone of the Republican Party and conservative Christianity, so they set up large voter registration organizations in those states to turn those states blue, because their goal is to destroy the Republican Party and create a one-party state in America, first run by the Democratic Party and their Chinese friends, and then run by themselves, Liberation Road. In Virginia, they have New Virginia Majority. That flipped that state. In North Carolina, they have the Carolina Federation. In Kentucky, they have Kentuckians for the Commonwealth. In Florida, they have Florida Rising, etc. So these organizations work heavily for the Democratic Party inside the Black and Latino communities of the South. In Tennessee, they have an actual headquarters called the Highlander Research and Education Center. Used to be called the Highlander Folk School, set up by the Communist Party in the 30s. Now it's run by Liberation Road. They have trained people from all over the South, fan them out across the South to start revolutions and change the politics of southern states. In Tennessee, they have Knoxville for All, are very close to achieving a majority on the Knoxville City Council. They have a whole bunch of people in Nashville on the City Council, etc. And with their group, Memphis for All, they've taken over several positions. In Memphis, Tennessee, they're trying to use the big black population of Memphis, Tennessee to win statewide races in that state. They are also very influential in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi. They helped the current mayor of Jackson, Chokwe Anta Lumumba, and his father, Chokwe Lumumba, both extreme black radicals, to take the mayoralty of that city and are busily turning that city into a revolutionary center to spread their ideas across the South. Liberation Road also works very closely with Mexican communists in the Morena Party. This is the party run by AMLO, the current president of Mexico, who is a Marxist. And their goal is to keep the borders wide open because they see massive uncontrolled immigration from Mexico, Guatemala, etc. as the key to destroying the social structures in this country and turning the country to a revolutionary situation. They are very much involved in promoting the illegal immigration movement, as is Communist Party USA, as is Democratic Socialists of America. Now, the real Freedom Road Socialist Organization, the one that has kept the old name, they split from the other Freedom Road Socialist Organization in 1998. They had a journal called Fight Back, so many people call them the Fight Back faction. They were very strong in the Midwest. They were strong in Chicago, in Wisconsin to a degree, in Madison, etc. Very much in Milwaukee and in Minneapolis. The Twin Cities is really their main headquarters. And so they have spread out from there. They have chapters in New York, in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They have very heavily infiltrated Florida. They have chapters in Miami, Jacksonville, Tampa, and Tallahassee, very active in that state. They've also got chapters in Austin, Texas, Houston, Texas, and Dallas, Phoenix, Arizona, a big chapter in Salt Lake City, San Jose, California, in the Bay Area, and also East LA, and a few smaller chapters in Connecticut and Colorado and Southern California, etc. They are pro-Chinese communists. They also support Putin's Russia, North Korea, Cuba, and Iran. They are street-level Maoist revolutionaries, very, very active, very willing to get into some pretty vigorous type of action on the streets. They were behind the big riots outside the Republican convention in Minneapolis in 2008, where petrol bombs were thrown. They tried to do the same thing in 2012, but a hurricane dampened that down. They were very active in Cleveland, Ohio, when Trump was inaugurated at the Republican convention then. They are street marching, fighting party. In 2019, they set up a group called the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, modeled on a Communist Party group of the same name from the 70s that was set up to free Communist Party member Angela Davis from jail when she was facing murder charges over the death of a California judge. They set this organization up. Their leader, Steph Yorick, said, the day Trump was inaugurated, their goal was to bring the president down by making the country ungovernable. So they were largely behind the mass rioting that erupted after George Floyd was killed in Minnesota. One of the leaders of Freedom Road, she runs a group called Justice for Jamar, which was an affiliate of the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. And I've got her on tape saying it, how she was so joyous. The police station was burnt to the ground, and that the looting, the rioting, and the arson was an integral part of their operation. They helped to start riots in New York. They helped to burn Kenosha, Washington, Chicago, places in North Carolina, several cities in Texas and Florida, Tucson, Arizona, the Bay Area, etc. And the riots they didn't start were pretty much organized by Liberation Road, the other communist group that is behind Black Lives Matter. Liberation Road, by the way, was heavily involved in the rioting in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014. That was sort of a trial run. When Michael Brown was killed by the police, Liberation Road, through their front, the Organization for Black Struggle, led the protests in that city. And they were joined, while our protests were going on, by some young Liberation Road allies who had just returned from China, from communist China, went straight from communist China out to Missouri. The Freedom Road Socialist Organization is very closely tied to Hamas, the terrorist group, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, another terrorist group, and the FARC, which is now leading a revolution in Colombia. In 2011, about 24, I believe it was, Freedom Road Socialist Organization comrades had their homes raided by the police for supporting these terrorist groups. These groups are on the State Department's terrorist list. You're not allowed to support them. It can get you several years in jail for doing so. So their homes were raided, massive amounts of materials were confiscated, but no prosecutions went forward. Possibly Obama's Attorney General Eric Holder may have been told that some of the people arrested actually had worked with Obama when he was a young radical in Chicago a few years before. And it might not have looked good to have the president tied to convicted terrorists. There's also the Party of Socialism and Liberation. This is quite a unique party. It's split off from the old Workers' World Party. It's got branches all over the country. Virtually every major centre in the country has a small branch of the PSL. They are very active. They support all the communist causes that you'd expect. They are very close to Russia. They support North Korea. They support China. They support Iran. They support Cuba. Hardcore Stalinist, Maoist communists. You'll see them everywhere with their big red flags marching through the streets. They lack a little political sophistication, but they make up for it with their enthusiasm, and it's certainly one of the most active street-level communist parties in the country. Now, the Party for Socialism and Liberation came out of the Workers' World Party. That was set up in 1959 as a breakaway from the old Trotskyist Socialist Workers' Party. And it became a really strange amalgam of Trotskyism and Stalinism. These are two strands of communism that are supposed to be totally opposed, but somehow they managed to amalgamate these. And as the years went by, they were very active in the anti-Vietnam War movement. They were very much a street-level, aggressive type of party, tied to Russia, tied to China, very, very close to Cuba. They split a couple of years ago. They've gone down. There are probably only a couple of hundred members left. They split into the Communist Workers League. That's the Detroit branch of Workers' World Party that split away. And also some of their members from the West Coast and Philadelphia set up the Socialist Unity Party. I'm presuming named after the old East German Communist Party of the same name. They're still active, they're still out there, but they're nowhere near the force they used to be. Now then, this Revolutionary Communist Party, or RevCom. Now this is more of a cult than a political party. They came out of the student movement of the 60s, Revolutionary Union, Revolutionary Communist Party. They founded Veterans for Peace, and they're still very active in the veterans movement. They have a whole series of bookshops around the country, Revolution Books. They probably have about 20 chapters now. They worship their godlike hero, Bob Avakian, an old student radical who lived for many years in Paris in self-imposed exile. Well, he's back in the country now. They're an active party, extremely cult-like. They run Refuse Fascism. Whenever you see an American flag being burned, it's probably RevCom. That is their modus operandi. You see it all of the time. They've actually fought Supreme Court cases on the issue of burning flags. A few years ago, they were tied to the Sendero Luminoso guerrillas in Peru. Now they're sort of generic Maoist. They're not openly tied to any foreign country. They're more or less a cult. Most of the other communists avoid them, but they are still a little bit of a force on the streets and have a real history of violence and disruption. There are other groups as well. Socialist Alternative is probably the biggest Trotskyist group left in the country. They have chapters all over the country. They're probably about 1,000 members. Many of them are actually inside Democratic Socialists of America. Their most famous member is Kasama Shawant. She is also a member of DSA. She's a city councillor out in Seattle, Washington. Their big goal is to break away, form a new socialist party independent of the Democratic Party. So in America, you got two lefts. You got the pro-Democratic Party left, which is Liberation Road, Communist Party USA, and DSA. Most of the other parties, they will work inside the Democratic Party and cooperate with the Democratic Party. They see the Democratic Party as a means of communizing America. Most of the other smaller groups don't want a bar of the Democrats. They're a street level, they're more independent, and Socialist Alternative has joined DSA to try and wean DSA away from the Democratic Party and use DSA to form its own breakaway third party, a socialist party of the workers. This is going to cause a big split in DSA. We can see it coming. If they don't kick out the Socialist Alternative people, there will be a big split in that organization. There are many other smaller sects and parties out there, Socialist Workers' Party, League of Revolutionaries for a New America, but now you know the main communist parties on the street in America. You know more about American communism than virtually any currently serving FBI agent would know these days. The FBI doesn't go near these people. They're far too busy tracking down people who took selfies in the Capitol building or dealing with low-level Black Lives Matter rioters, etc. They will not touch the left. They will not go anywhere near the real organized left in this country, because if you go after real communists in this country, you always find Democrats behind them. And that's very politically embarrassing for the FBI. So I hope you found this interesting. I hope you'll go to the websites of these organizations and check up what I have to say. I'm sure you'll find the information is all verified. And you'll find, if you live in Canada, if you live in Australia, Britain, France, most of these parties have sister parties who operate similarly in your countries as well. So again, I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found this useful. Please keep watching. Please subscribe to our show. And remember, only truth can set us free. So God bless America, and God bless all of you. Thank you.